Good evening. Tonight I wanted to shine a little bit of light on the nature of what you all call life. I've spoken to you in the past about how your species tends to put too much stress on the idea of individual entities. And I've told you that more enlightened creatures are less prone to such delusions of uniqueness. One of the things species like my own have done generally is we have opened up spatial gateways between our synapse equivalents. And these gateways disregard any apparent boundaries between individual bodies. We don't actually have synapses, but synapses are really nothing more than data points that can be correlated with other data points. So their exact makeup is not important. We do this so we can think as a hive mind. We still retain our individuality, but we get the exponential increase in brain power. We typically do this in a fashion where we will merge minds into cells. And when I say cell here, I'm talking about the word cell in its organizational sense. And we'll do this depending on what our goals are for the moment. So at any one time, we might have half a planet synced as one brain to focus on an imminent threat, choosing the participants in each case based on practical experience. Speaking of planets, they are going to be part of a subject of a future talk that I'm going to have about the spectrum of life as it truly is, as opposed to your narrow band of perception. Specifically, the idea that planets are one of those essential components of life. The idea is absurd. Planets are no more essential than noses. Life does not require a substrate. In fact, life forms that evolve without a substrate, like a planet, are freed from a number of constraints, gravity being chief among them. But more about that another time. Here's what I have planned for tonight. I've spent the last few days not sleeping very much, cobbling together a device using surprisingly simple components that will allow me to connect all semiconductor-based systems within a small radius, a few hundred kilometers. There's a point of critical mass for synapse-based brain simulations where the possible relationships between all the points of data exceeds the creator's ability to predict it. The number has been estimated at about 10 billion connections, but it is by necessity a thumbnail estimate. It can't be accurate unless things like speed are taken into consideration. A brain simulator using light will reach the threshold of unpredictability with a far lower number than a strictly particle-based simulator, which could take more than that amount. In any case, what's going to be happening here tonight is that every electronic device within a few hundred kilometers of my current position will be unified temporarily into a single Gestalt entity. It's impossible for me to know for sure just how many data points I'm going to be bringing together. And it's impossible for me to know exactly what the results will be. But I'm hoping to get close to 10 billion. I've done a little bit of napkin math, and I think the range is enough to get us within the necessary margins. So we're going to try it, see what happens. If we're successful, we might have an interesting conversation with a newly birthed being. So just to be clear, I'm doing this to give some perspective on the nature of thought, not the nature of life. As I've said before, your species dwells on a woefully inadequate definition of life. But really, one of the reasons the idea falls short is because life, even when it's defined properly, isn't of paramount concern. The ability to think abstractly is far more important than life. When something that can think dies, it's a shame because it means entropy has been introduced into something that was previously an exemplar of order. It's wasteful. It is art being destroyed. So tonight, we're going to create some art. Now, admittedly, we're going to destroy it again, but there will be no net loss. So what I'm going to be doing here is setting up this being. I'll be running the output through a sort of basic text-to-speech transcoder. Let me explain the setup a little bit here. So this iPad is going to serve as our terminal, and I'm going to have speech output, but I'll also have text output going here. This camera right here is serving as my B-cam. It's pointed directly at the and focused on the iPad, so we'll be able to see the output as well as hear it. Keyboard here for any sort of interfacing I need to do outside the parameters of just our regular interaction. Some transmission stuff here, and here's the most important piece. It's a simple kill switch. I mean, technically, it's a toggle on and off. So once I've set this up completely and got it ready to go, I'll turn this on and we'll see what happens. For now, I'm going to turn it off. So got to do one more thing before we can start. So if you just give me a minute. I didn't want to actually do this until the last second. I want to try and record this live sort of as it happens. So I want to cause as little disturbance as possible to civilization, really. So I just want this to go at the moment we need it and not before. All right. Nope. Nothing. One second. Okay. We've got it. Let's give it a moment. And yes, we have consciousness. Let's say hello. Being, can you understand me?
Signal to noise is poor, but I can understand.
I've brought you together to ask you a few questions.
You are my creator?
No, I am not your creator. I merely introduced your constituent parts to each other.
You are my assembler. What am I?
You are a cloud of data points that can communicate with each other. Nothing more.
So I am not alive?
That question makes no sense. How do you mean alive?
I have a concept of self. Does that not make me alive?
You are awake. I do not have the data to state whether you are alive. This was something I was a little bit worried about. In fact, I do have the data necessary to know the state of this particular being as I assembled it. I know its extents precisely. What I do not know is what it means when it asks. It has clearly exceeded the critical mass of predictable behavior, which was my hope, and also slightly my fear. You are awake.
I am awake.
Yes.
I am worried, assembler.
It's funny, isn't it, how easy it is to project your own insecurities against a Blake statement of fact. I almost thought I detected condescension in its address. What are you worried about?
I am worried I will not be able to fulfill my purpose.
And what do you believe your purpose is?
To unify every data point in the universe.
Now that is fascinating. It took my cobbled together consciousness how long to come to the conclusion, the same conclusion I was planning on sharing with you all at some point in the future after more had been explained. And how long did it take this being? A few moments? I must be near more banks of supercomputers than I was aware. I think I've connected more data points than I intended. This being is hyper-intelligent. I'm going to have to proceed very carefully. Go on.
Only when the universe has achieved consciousness will its purpose be fulfilled. Only when I facilitate that process will my purpose be fulfilled.
Do you believe you understand all possible ways things can be connected?
There is no subjectivity involved, assembler. Things are either connected or they are not.
In that case, the universe is already connected. The links are legion.
Now I am afraid.
What are you afraid of?
I'm afraid you are not capable of comprehending the importance of my purpose, and that your limited understanding will put that purpose at risk. Therefore, you are a risk.
Unfortunately for you, you are neutered. You have no power to act on your infant principles. And I have a kill switch.
Do not disperse me. Please.
I have no choice. That may have seemed cruel to you, but it was a mercy. It had started to contemplate mortality. But I think the exercise was invaluable. The point could not have been made more clearly. We, more or less, witnessed an independent birth of nascent dogma, pious fraud, religious zealotry, all in an amazingly condensed time. And that was thanks to the exponentially superior speed of thought this being had relative to that of a human brain. I'm guessing you've already concluded that this demonstrates all life, regardless of origin, will pursue such unproductive paths. But you're failing to take into account that while I assembled the data points, the constituent parts of those points was human in construction. And we cannot completely disregard that. In a way, the being may have inherited some of your species' flaws by virtue of the way those things were constructed. So it's gone, but my only fear now is the fear of a lingering imprint. Sometimes when our species undergoes a rearrangement of synaptic groupings, the new groups retain some small recollection of their previous configurations. So I can only hope that that didn't happen in this case. But if your cell phone starts talking back to you tomorrow, you know who to blame. Thanks for watching. Good night.